Mooji, I'm so thankful to you that you have time for me to talk. I'm going through some interesting times in my life. I have a question which has been on my mind lately. I need a resolution about this, and that's ego. I need to understand what to do with ego. I think I have an idea which is going to revolutionize technology, the way how Facebook, let's say, changed how we communicate.
Yes.
The same type of impact. Very, very, I would say it came like a revelation almost, like a whole business plan, a whole platform at one moment of time. And then, so it seemed like it was almost, divine to me, because it didn't come from me thinking, but more like I received the message or received this from somewhere. I don't know. But the moment I feel that you're exposed to this type of higher knowledge, ego kicks in. And I feel guilty about having an ego at this point at all. So my question is, should we consider ego a friend? Because I understand that it's a fixed part of human being. That's a part of us. Is there such thing as a healthy ego, and how to treat ego from the higher self perspective? How to do that right, not to be consumed by, that constant circle of, achieving something and then feeling guilty of feeling good about achieving this.
Okay, there are a few points. One is that you received this insight, maybe inspiration, and so this has come. And you have already said you were not working hard for it. It just occurred to you. And then the sense of ego comes in and wants to take ownership of it or something like that. And there's an awareness of this play of ego also is like that. Now, this is not an uncommon experience. And for many people, this ego feeling comes. And they say, no, I don't want to even touch anything or do anything, because quickly the ego sabotages all true efforts and turn them into something dirty. And I said, no, you must not be so concerned about that. If the ego says, oh, look how good you are, how clever you are, who is it speaking to also? Who is it speaking to? Say, for instance, if it was the Buddha and something comes also, an insight into a way in which, some guidance could come to humanity, and then the ego comes and says, oh, look, you're so great, you're so wonderful, look what you have done, there's no other human being have done like this before or something. It's the same thing. He would be aware of that. He would not say, oh, I better not go in this direction because the ego is going to trouble me so much. Okay. The point is, you would understand that somehow this ego sense does come, and it comes somehow to kind of test your realization sometime, to see if you will go for pride or arrogance or something like that, which would only kind of divide you, make you feel very strongly I and others. And so some pride will come, some arrogance will come, you see? So, but that can only, it may suggest, but it cannot make that happen. So this energy comes and says, look, you are going to be such a great inventor, everything is going to change for you. You don't have to take ownership of that thought. Mm-hmm. It just the mechanism of it is an aspect of consciousness working through the mind, and it somehow, I feel that there's the attitude to take is that these forces, they come to is to help you to refine your own consciousness, because it means that if it is a temptation, then there's some aspect of the self which is temptable, because there cannot be a temptation unless something is temptable. So it just brings up this kind of complexity, but it still has not touched you. It forces you to feel the energy that is a potential to go into ego. But then you say, but this is also observed, you know. And
Yes.
again, if it is observed, you keep the energy in the observing source, and see if this question has any power when you remain as the observing source. To whom is this question a trouble? You see, and then you will see that maybe this question can only trouble an idea I have of who I am or how I might be, which is only a projection. You know,
Right.
it can be a tight moment, but it's a very important thing to transcend the influence or the suggestion that comes in the form of egoic thought, you see. So many people, they avoid and they say, no, it's better I don't do this because then my mind is going to take over something. I said, no. If you have done something, say you have acted spontaneously and in a generous way, and then the thought comes, wow, you look how good you are, or no, you didn't do it, you had some other motive for doing it or something like this, no? Then, you know, it still does not destroy the action. The action took place, but then it brings in a kind of duality inside you, and then something feels, no, I don't want to feel this feeling. But if you understand that, you know, it is a force of nature that's acting through as mind, and it works like that actually, and you can turn it to your advantage to see that yes, to check in with yourself, is this true? You know, and if it is true, for whom is it true? You see, for who can stumble over this? It must be again a kind of my false idea or self-image will struggle with this kind of thought.
I know it is superficial because I feel peace inside of me. I feel all this, things happening around, but very, very deep inside, I'm at peace still. You know, it bothers me only on the outside level, but I keep my base in the center.
This is very good. This is very good.
That way it doesn't touch me. And that way I can balance high achievement lifestyle, but not be consumed by ego and,
Yes.
self-gratification and things, of the temporary nature and things like that. But then when we're talking about your consciousness and my consciousness or somebody's consciousness, we always talking about how we are one. But I also want to understand how are we different, but not on the level of this body and this mind, but
I understand.
in the sense that let's say some people self-realize and then they don't have to reincarnate anymore, and some people, so there is some kind of difference beyond the body, right?
Okay.
Between consciousness.
Let me say.
Is it one?
Yeah, let me say like this. It's a very interesting observation. If we say consciousness it's one. It's one. Like the ocean is one. But there is at the same time a subtle kind of individuality about consciousness. Because if consciousness was just one in that way, it means that if I wake up to the truth of my consciousness, if I wake up, if I have the awakening here, if that happens here, then it would mean that it will wake up in everybody if it is one. So what seems to happen is that the consciousness in its expression in this body awakens to the truth of its own nature in this body. And what it awakens to in this body is that it is the same consciousness in everybody. This is what the awakening is. But in each body, it must awaken uniquely in that body.
And it manifests uniquely in everybody.
Yes, yes. It manifests uniquely. The essence is the same. The expression is different. Because the expression happens in manifestation, in duality, in diversity, through the senses and the elements. So there's a uniqueness, just like in each flower, each petal is kind of unique. Everything is kind of unique in this way. But the source is the same.
But then my question is, does duality goes beyond the physical world? You say that there is a flavor about everybody beyond this body, though.
Yes.
It's not personality per se, but some type of qualities maybe. Some people are greedy and they just, they didn't grow up poor or anything, but there's something in them, is this way. Or some people are really kind and it's just that way about them. They were born that way, and there's something which continues to push them in that direction, and and they probably unconsciously follow that without even self-realizing. But then we come to memories, and because do memories just manifest here in the physical world, or do we everything is kind of recorded, and would we have access to our memories and past life memories when we, let's say, in between reincarnations?
Okay.
Is memory something which stays in my brain, or is it something which is out there in some field or something? Like what about memory?
Okay. As soon as the consciousness is manifest in the form of existence, in the form of the feeling I am, I exist, the knowledge I exist. When the consciousness announces itself in each body, it says I exist. Then this I exist feeling is, you may say, in its purest way, it functions as the perceiver of the manifest world, of the sense of individuality that gets formed, of relationship and time, events, and so on. All of that is recorded through the instrument of that knowledge I am, I exist. So it is our waking state life manifests in that kind of continuity. Now, you ask a question, but what about the falling of the body? And some people seem to, without any like a child may grow up in a very, very good family with very, very good values and still turn out to be a murderer or a thief or something like this, contrary to their upbringing. So where did that come from? So many different things can be said about that, because it is said that it's not the body that reincarnates, and it's not the self that reincarnates. It must be the mind that reincarnates. Where in the I amness, when the I amness, which is a kind of bridge between the manifest world and the supreme principle, the feeling I am allows, you may call the absolute, to perceive diversity and have experience in the form of I am, the feeling I am. So if this I amness itself identifies very strongly with the body and with conditioning, and believe itself to be the individuality which is formed from the belief I am this body, I am the son of these people, or I'm the daughter of these people. If that belief system is very deeply held in the consciousness and the mind, and memory, subsequently memory, that is the resource for the sense of the person, of personhood. Now, if the body falls away, and the consciousness I am hasn't resolved itself in its original knowledge, but dies at a time, so to speak, when it is still in strong identification with the body, that identification perpetuates in some subtler way. So it goes into a form of, just like in this body, We are functioning in this body, in the feeling I am this body. But in some other times, we are functioning in a more subtler consciousness, in when we use our imagination or a dream or fantasy or whatever it is. So that's another kind of body. Like when you are asleep, you're not so conscious of this physical body, but you may have a dream wherein you are even a different gender in your dream, and you still have the sense I am, you still have a sense of an identity, and you may believe yourself to be a mother of 25 children in that dream, and with all the emotions, all the relationship qualities that would be in the normal waking state. So we see that we are multidimensional in our functioning of consciousness, both in the bodily existence and also in the dream state also.
And at that moment when you would feel that you are that woman and mother of 25 children, you would have access to all her memories, and you actually would be her in a sense.
Yes.
In that. So
just in the same, like we are being this in this life also. Because I said once, I don't know if you saw, I said that each day you wake up from perhaps a dream, but to be fully awake, you must wake up from the waking state also. Because in the waking state, I call it a dream, to the extent, what I mean by that is that we are still under the belief and the illusion that we are this body, this is what we are this conditioning, we are our education. Just in the same way that the same thing could be applicable to yourself in a dream state. And we have very strong links and identification and attachments in the waking state. If I gave an example that if I were to, say 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you perhaps had very different self-image. And you would feel very strongly, this is me, this is who I am. Take it or leave it, this is who I am. But 10 years later, your whole outlook may have changed. And now you feel, this is who I am. This is who I am. This is what I can say I am. Now, if I were to say, able to take you from this present moment and put you back 10 years ago into a state of mind where you felt in that time, this is how I am, I cannot change who I am, you would be perhaps very uncomfortable with that position, with your present knowledge and your present, maturity. So none of these states along the line, all throughout your life at varying points, you had a very strong sense of self. And now looking back, none of these selves were accurately you. They were just how you felt at the time. So this is really why I say that no particular position in your life and identification is eternal and is constant. Everything is only what is your passion at this moment. And that will change, because this is the mind that evolves, not the self. Mm-hmm. The continuity that we feel through all these changing years and moments, it comes from the self, not from the mind. The mind is constantly changing.
So there is a memory of the mind, and then there is a memory of the self.
I don't know if it is a memory of the self. It cannot be a memory of the self, because then it would locate the self in time. What there is, there's an intuitive fact of our existence, which is not consciously recognized in the mind. It is always there, but we have not consciously recognized that. And so that is where our ability to assess even the most subtle truths come from. Because when you are conscious of your consciousness, it's like the whole field is open to you. But when you're conscious of yourself only as a person and your conditioning, you're always functioning from a limitation. Now, it is that sense of belief in the limited identity that if the life force is cut while the consciousness is still in a state of delusion or hypnosis, believing itself to be just the body mind, then what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is just in the same way in which you go to bed as Max. When you wake up, you don't wake up as Harry. There's a continuity there. Well, in the same way, whatever impression is deeply held in the psyche and the mind, that will continue, because the physicality, the physical death, is not so different from the state of deep sleep, wherein when you wake up, because you did not know when you're going to wake up, or if you're going to wake up, you have an assumption you're going to wake up in the physical world, and with the former continuity of being who you were yesterday, continuing today. Now, once someone asks myself, they say, what is your strongest impression when you first wake up? And I say, my strongest impression, if I want to say strongest, is that nothingness remains unchanged. My reading of the world, just 2 days ago, we are talking with one friend here, and he says his experience when he wakes up is of great pain, because he says, oh, this is all over again. I've got to go through this all over again. So this is a kind of a state of mind and projection that is not a truth. It is something that is a cultivated habit or something based upon the wrong sense of self, and you see, like this. Whereas for myself, I'm not intimidated by the functioning of manifestation. It is not the way in which I don't take a reading of the manifestation as a reading of myself. It can be whatever it is. I have no particular investment or interest in any particular aspect of it. I don't have an investment in how it should manifest. So therefore, I am very happy. And also, I don't have a future. So I am also very happy. I don't have this concept of a future that I'm depending on. So I'm deeply content. You see, like this. Now, what shall be my state then? If suddenly this breath is cut, I don't know, but I don't see what difference it would really make. There will be some difference. I don't know how it will be, but I know that there cannot be, oh my gosh, I won't be able to finish this, because that is not so strong inside. There is some subtle thing though, because for instance, we are here in Portugal. This whole coming to Portugal was not something we were chasing at all. It just came in perhaps the same way as you said your own insight came. We came on holiday, somehow we met a friend here, they introduced some people, somehow it just came, it just unfolded like that. So my sense is that it appears as though the manifestation is moving by its own will in a certain way, and something cooperates with this. It's all one movement. Now, I am not looking at that as a guarantee or a kind of security that the next few days or next hours or years are going to be a certain way. Just let it be. And sometimes
enjoying whatever comes, and it's just all the synchronicities. It just happens. You let it happen by itself. And,
yes.
Whatever happens is,
yes, we can say enjoying is just letting it be. The joy is not in what happens so much, although what happens is not felt to be without joy, but there is not a joy anticipated from how things happen. One sees that when there is no personal investment in how things should be, then whatever the unfolding seems to be in a synchronicity with my own sense of being, which is in itself happy. So everything together becomes a kind of happiness, but not an excitement. It's just a sort of maybe happiness could be called contentment. It could be called love. I don't know. It is like that.
Peace.
Peace also is. It includes all of this.
Yes. And I do feel that that exactly the same way as you describing this. Just let it happen as it may. The destiny unfold, and let the universe work through you as it wishes, and that would allow probably for the best balance. And what you said about not having a personal investment in the future of this. Just let it happen as it may, and that would probably elevate a lot of suffering and a lot of stress, which we go through, as we trying to, not trying to, but working through our daily lives and dealing with our daily problems.
Most people, just by our upbringing, we have been trained to be disappointed with what life brings. We have been trained to manipulate, we give it a name, creativity, but sometimes to manipulate things to satisfy your projection. Some beings have recognized that life unfolding in the way it comes spontaneously is not disagreeable. It is not in conflict. It is not. Of course, sometimes an earthquake may come and the whole city may fall. But they are also perceiving that that is a kind of natural phenomenon. Who is to be blamed for this? We don't know. They don't interfere in saying it should or should not be. It's almost as though they exist through their eyes mostly. They allow what happens to take place, and their response also is a part of what is taking place. It's also the action of the universe. So the universe is maybe acting and responding to action through the instrument of this body. And they don't create a kind of barrier or separation for that functioning. This consciousness is very simple, innocent, and pure. It is not suppressing any aspect of the functioning of consciousness. It is not saying how things should be. It has no conflict with the expression of emotions. It feels naturally all the characteristics of the mind in manifestation, but it is not identified or attached with any particular aspect of that manifestation. Mm-hmm. It has no pride. It is like this, but it can be a gradual adjusting to a recognition that continuously is deepening and becoming more in harmony with the universal current. It's not that in one snap of the finger everything is like this. Sometimes in one snap of a finger, faster than that, an insight can be so profound that your life is changed forever in a new direction. But it doesn't necessarily get rid of certain characteristics, certain kind of play of conditioning. What happens is that the presence and play of those conditioning become weaker in their effect, because the sense of the person who is doing or not doing is weakening, disappearing altogether, and is being replaced just by consciousness presence, which is impersonal and complete as joy and as pure perceiving. This for me is the perhaps the highest. I don't want to use the word attainment, because it's not really that there's an individual attaining it. Although,
but that's where I want to be.
Yes. The joy I have in my heart is pointing this out to people, that your inherent nature is already functioning like that. But what tends to happen is that there is a sort of a projection, a kind of like that seems to eclipse the intuitive recognition of what is already functioning perfectly, because our attention goes and is dwelling in the kind of the world of projection and conditioning and desire and identification. And while the consciousness is absorbed through its attention and fascination with that kind of projected world, it is not in direct communion with its universal quality or being. So satsang is only to keep pointing this out and to immerse the mind into the intimacy of the heart, into the spontaneity of true existence, and so to remove from the human psyche this obsession for manipulating existence with the belief that it necessarily needs to be manipulated in order to fit into our projections. And we are obsessed with trying to manipulate with a very biased mind, thinking that it can work for us like that. So we want to create a world that other people is going to be perfect for other people as well, which is pure ignorance. Because such a world often is based, even though it can appear to be founded upon by compassion, it cannot get rid of its own selfishness, its own ignorance also. So only the one who is free from that egoic interference, because the ego is constantly interfering and misinterpreting the manifestation.
So again, then ego, could it be tamed and made behave? Because I don't think we can be human and not have ego at all. Is it possible to,
yes, I would say that only the ego would benefit from that attempt. First of all, it is important to know oneself beyond the ego.
Yes.
When one knows oneself beyond ego, the potency, the virility of the egoic mind is softened and merges also in the universal consciousness.
Okay, so it does have some connection. Ego has some merging connection into the universal consciousness.
I would prefer to say that it is the consciousness itself that momentarily portrays itself through the costume of the ego or individuality in that respect. If it is seen like that, then the power is taken out of the hands of the ego, and the ego is merely sitting in the lap of the higher consciousness. That's one way we can look at it, no? Okay? Ego then becomes, it's as though you remove the poisonous fangs from the serpent, and then it is tame enough to be what it is. Enjoy everything. Because its authority is broken, because it has no real authority. It has illusory authority. And if the consciousness does not awaken to the true position and continues to be mesmerized or distracted by the play of the ego, then it breeds suffering, you see.
Yes.
You see, ego is not real. It's not real.
It's also a manifestation of something, right?
It is a manifestation, but that manifestation is only the manifestation doesn't have independent power. It runs on phantom power. It has to draw its power from the belief that you who are the sentient being, because the mind is not sentient. It's like the moon. We talk about the moonlight, but the moon has no light. The moonlight is only a reflection from sun. But because it looks white and cool, we said we don't feel it has anything to do with the sun. But the sun can be without the moon, but the moon cannot be without the sun. So in the same way, I just say it is important for us to first be aware. And the game of the existence is that when you know who you are, what you are as the pure self, then the ego then somehow it's like becomes a pale shadow. Like we say, when the sunlight is up, sometimes you can see the moon. but it has no power. It is there. The sun hasn't killed the moon.
Yeah,
It's there. It is.
See that there, yeah.
It is there, but it's only a soft shadow of in the light of the glory of the self. I don't want to paint the picture ego is bad. Ego is only virile while the self is in delusion. When the self believes itself to be a person, then the ego feels strong. When the self realizes that it is the self, then ego merges in the self itself.
Okay.
You see?
So ego goes wherever self goes.
Yes.
Self is a delusion, then ego is
Delusion means that the self has forgotten what it is, and it is running under the authority of the ego itself. That is called delusion. In the cosmic wholeness, the ego has a role to play. It helps somehow consciousness to refine itself. Sometimes I say that consciousness seems to create a problem in order to have the experience of transcending it. And in the same way, I feel that the consciousness manifests ego in order to somehow use the friction of consciousness to refine itself. If you see it in this way, then there's a kind of globality about this kind of insight. And there is no offense. It's almost like everything is together, the harmony playing with itself through the effect or the portrayal of disharmony. But always the harmony is the greater. But the game of life is that when consciousness believes itself to be the individuality, which is what it manifests as a game to itself, but when it believes in that, it loses its power and falls in what is called a delusion, that it is only the limited manifestation. When it recognizes that is not true, then the power returns to itself, and the ego, which then seemed was so great, again is seen in its true light, that it's only illusory, has no power. The power of the ego is you. Your belief in it gives it a kind of empowerment.
So there's no problem at all then. I just created it in my mind by giving ego a place to be at all. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there's different ways of seeing it, because once we are under the belief, the delusion that we are the person, which is the ego, the game doesn't seem funny at all. When you are conscious of it, then it loses its power, its potency, and then it seems like it is a divine game. But until it is realized, it doesn't feel like it's a divine game. It feels like a very cruel play.
Well, it feels like a divine game.
Yes.
It does. But I see now. Do we have to come to self-realization in every life? It turns to be that, person cannot be born self-realized. So we have to go through this every time. Is there some type of progression, though, in evolution from one lifetime to another? In other words,
it would seem from the concept of. It can seem from the perspective of the concept of evolution and reincarnation that the whole process must be a process of evolutionary refinement, or the bleeding away of the delusion that we are the limited self. It must be that there's a journey of a refining from the delusion that we are this person, which then makes us, the consciousness, fragmented in our perception of the world, hostile, selfish, arrogant, evil. All of these things can come out of that ignorance. Mm-hmm. So the life itself is the guru of all beings, because the life will not allow you can never win over life. You're slowly being crushed and squeezed and reshaped and refreshed in order to evolve, into your own pure being again. This is what I'd call the Leela of God, the play of the existence itself. So not all the beings seem to start out on the same point, because there are beings, you can say, from this perspective of looking, who are ancient in their wisdom, and there are some who are teenage in their evolution at the level of consciousness. And so some beings maybe come in because in order to manifest in this body, it does put some tax on the consciousness. And the tax on the consciousness is that it tends to forget its true nature. But when consciousness manifests in a form, it becomes deeply fascinated and addicted to experiencing. And it wants to perpetuate its existence in the form, in whatever that present form is. And it is so deeply attracted and besotted with experiencing. And that is the delusion itself. There are some beings who become tired of experiencing. They are not necessarily tired of existence, but they are not searching for new experience. So their minds have become to a state of rest and peace also.
But when you say beings, so there are different beings? It's not just one being then? Or because we say it's one.
You know something? Conversations at a human level always fall short. Because if we could take you out of the framework, the mental and psychological framework of a human being, into the infinite mind, these questions will become immediately fried and redundant. Because I can say there's one being manifesting as billions uncountable beings, and I can say that there's individuality, but it's a dream, it's not true. I can say that the consciousness individuates itself and appears in each body as the feeling I am, and that the I amness itself is a kind of spiritual personality of the highest refinement, but there's a uniqueness in each one. And I can say all of this is completely dream, throw it out, forget all about it. I can tell you that there is no knowledge to have. I could say this, that all knowledge is a form of ignorance, which is also the divine manifestation. And yet I can go into each of these areas and open an invisible door into this other world, and we can surf in these worlds for thousands of years and still not become one drop in the ocean of the existence of the mind of God. So we can speak a bit like this, and I say for myself, it's a little bit a way of passing time in a pure way, in a beautiful way. But
it's just so right about that. There is just no words, I guess, and there is no terms and no. It's like we without human mind, we're missing some parts of the picture which that don't even take probably into
as long as we believe in a mind and an evolutionary being, then we must resort to concepts to try and understand the nature of that evolution. Whereas in our pure state, we are not fascinated by knowledge of that sort. Perhaps the highest joy of the liberated ones is that which is gained through contemplation of the self. And when I say contemplation of the self, it's not a studied contemplation. It is just of the intuitive unity of the all-encompassing knowledge, which is only the potential of God expressed through the mind. But there is no fascination for any itemized knowledge. There is no concept that is worthy of being kept as a treasure. Everything is washed clean, completely, and everything somehow becomes shares the same DNA as the supreme reality. And it's like not you're beyond concepts altogether. When I am here as I am, concepts is not really given such a high status. It is just I don't know. It is like spiritual Nutella or something. We are enjoy a little bit spreading the Nutella of the supreme, but it has no no eternal or timeless quality about it. The best knowledge is that knowledge which acts as a reflection of the self, that reminds the self or brings the self into self-contemplation. This knowledge, and it doesn't need to be impressive and in any way. It is the most naked and you know, simple.
It sounds simple, and it is simple, but you know, it's simple until once you done it, you realize how simple it is.
Yes, it's like you can look in a mirror, and that's a very simple thing. But if someone wants to talk about the mechanism of reflection, they could write, you know, a book of unending pages about what might appear in the mirror.
Okay. That's helpful. I understand. That's good. I'm not gonna write the mechanism of light and how it hits the mirror and I love you, Mooji. Thank you.
I love you too, and I'm so happy to see you again.
Yeah, I am very thankful. I needed this. It's beautiful to hear the truth.
Yes.
So thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you.